The sun dipped low behind the smokestacks of Harbor Ridge, casting jagged shadows over the crumbling tenements of Sycamore Lane. The air was thick, with the faint tang of burning coal, clinging to every brick and corner of the weathered neighborhood. Laughter once rang out here, children playing tag, neighbors chatting from porch to porch. Now, silence reigned, broken only by the occasional creak of a rusted bicycle wheel or the distant barking of a stray dog. Marcus Taylor stood on his sagging front porch, staring out at the empty street. His hands were calloused from years of hard labor, gripping the splintered railing like it might give him some sort of answer. The flyer he'd found on his doorstep that morning was still clutched in his fist. Bright, glossy letters promised urban renewal and luxury living. But Marcus saw it for what it was, eviction wrapped in a pretty bow. "Dad?" A soft voice called from inside the house. Marcus turned to see Rosa, his 14-year-old daughter, standing in the doorway. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her school uniform hung loose on her slender frame. She held up a sketchbook, a hopeful glint in her eyes. "Can you look at this? It's for my art project." Marcus forced a smile and nodded. "Of course, sweetheart. Let me see." Rosa flipped through the pages, revealing intricate pencil drawings of their neighborhood, its faded beauty captured in fine detail. One sketch showed their street, complete with the cracked pavement and graffiti-covered walls, but also the tiny garden Marcus had planted in front of their house. "It's beautiful," Marcus said, his voice thick with pride. "You've got a real gift." Rosa beamed, but her expression faltered when her eyes landed on the flyer in Marcus's hand. "What's that?" Marcus hesitated, crumpling the paper into a ball. "Nothing you need to worry about. Just some junk mail." But Rosa wasn't convinced. She'd overheard enough whispers at school to know what was happening to their neighborhood. Developers were buying up properties, and families like hers were being forced out. The thought made her stomach twist. That night, as Marcus tried to sleep, a loud banging on the door jolted him awake. His heart raced as he grabbed the baseball bat he kept under the bed and crept toward the front door. The banging continued, urgent and unrelenting. "Who's there?" Marcus called out, his voice firm but cautious. "It's me, Maria," came the muffled reply. "Open up." Marcus relaxed, setting the bat aside as he opened the door to reveal Maria Alvarez, his neighbor and longtime friend. Her face was flushed, her breath coming in quick gasps. "They're moving faster than we thought," Maria said, thrusting a stack of papers into Marcus's hands. "Look at this." The documents detailed the timeline for the redevelopment project. Marcus scanned the pages, his jaw tightening. They had less than 3 months before the first wave of evictions would begin. "They're targeting the renters first," Maria continued, her voice trembling with anger. "But homeowners like us won't be far behind." Marcus felt a knot of dread settle in his chest. "We can't let them do this." Maria nodded. "We're meeting at the community center tomorrow night. Bring Rosa if you can. This fight isn't just about us, it's about her future too." The community center was packed the next evening, the air buzzing with tension. Faces both familiar and unfamiliar filled the room, parents clutching their children, elderly residents who had lived in Sycamore Lane for decades, and a handful of teenagers with defiant expressions. Marcus stood at the back of the room, Rosa by his side. She clutched her sketchbook tightly, her eyes darting around nervously. Maria stood at the front, her voice clear and commanding as she addressed the crowd. "They think they can erase us," Maria said, holding up one of the flyers. "But this isn't just about buildings. This is about lives, our lives, and we're not going down without a fight." The crowd erupted in applause, but it was short-lived. A man in a tailored suit stepped forward, his polished shoes clicking against the scuffed floor. Derek Vaughn, the face of the redevelopment project, surveyed the room with a smug smile. "You all have every right to voice your concerns," Vaughn said smoothly. "But let's be realistic. This neighborhood is in decline. What we're offering is a chance for progress, for improvement." Marcus's blood boiled as Vaughn spoke, his words dripping with condescension. Rosa tugged at his sleeve, her voice barely a whisper. "Who is that?" "Trouble," Marcus muttered, his eyes locked on Vaughn. When the meeting ended, Marcus approached Maria. "He's not going to back down," Maria nodded grimly. "Neither are we." Back at home, Rosa sat at the kitchen table, furiously sketching. Her pencil flew across the page, capturing the tension and emotion of the night's meeting. She drew Vaughn's smirking face, surrounded by faceless figures in suits, looming over the crumbling homes of Sycamore Lane. When she finished, she held up the sketch. "Do you think this could make a difference?" Marcus studied the drawing, his heart swelling with pride. "I think it already has." Rosa decided to share her artwork online, creating a social media account dedicated to her neighborhood. Her drawings quickly gained attention, with people from across the city sharing and commenting on her posts. Each piece told a story of resilience, of community, of the fight to save what mattered most. But not everyone was supportive. Anonymous messages began flooding her inbox, accusing her of spreading negativity and blaming her father for the neighborhood's decline. Rosa tried to ignore them, but the words stung. "You're stronger than this," Marcus told her one evening, his hand resting on her shoulder. "Don't let them silence you." Rosa nodded, but the fear lingered. Rosa's online presence began to shift the tide. Her sketches not only captured the struggles of Sycamore Lane, but also highlighted the humanity of its residents. Single mothers juggling 2 jobs, elderly couples tending their small gardens, children playing hopscotch in the cracked streets. Each post carried a simple but powerful caption: "This is home." The posts gained traction, drawing the attention of local journalists and activists. A piece in the city's newspaper featured Rosa's artwork, calling her the voice of Sycamore Lane. It was a moment of pride for Marcus and Rosa, but it also drew the ire of Derek Vaughn. At the next community meeting, the tension was palpable. Vaughn had doubled down on his efforts, sending notices to renters and threatening legal action against those who refused to leave. He arrived at the meeting flanked by 2 lawyers, his smug demeanor replaced with a steely determination. "This isn't personal," Vaughn said, his voice echoing through the room. "It's business. The sooner you accept that, the better off you'll be." Maria stood her ground. "This isn't just business. This is our lives. You can't put a price on that." The room erupted in applause, but Vaughn's cold gaze settled on Rosa. "Your daughter seems to think otherwise," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. "Stirring up trouble online doesn't change reality." Marcus stepped forward, his fists clenched at his sides. "Leave her out of this," Vaughn smirked. "Then keep her out of my way." The confrontation left a sour taste in Marcus's mouth. As the meeting ended, he pulled Maria aside. "He's not just threatening us anymore. He's targeting Rosa." Maria's expression darkened. "Then we hit back harder." Inspired by Rosa's growing audience, the residents of Sycamore Lane organized a protest. It was a peaceful march, weaving through the streets with banners and chants echoing off the dilapidated buildings. Rosa walked beside her father, carrying a sign with her own sketch of the neighborhood, the words "We belong here" scrawled across the top. The march ended in front of the construction site, where Vaughn's crew had begun demolishing old buildings. A chain-link fence surrounded the area, and armed security guards stood watch. The protesters lined the street, their voices rising as they demanded to be heard. "Enough is enough," Maria shouted into a megaphone. "We will not be erased." But the peaceful demonstration turned tense when Vaughn arrived in a black SUV. He stepped out, flanked by more security, and addressed the crowd with feigned civility. "You're only delaying the inevitable," he said, his voice calm but condescending. "This project is going forward, whether you like it or not." The crowd's anger boiled over. Someone threw a bottle, shattering it near Vaughn's feet. The security guards moved in, and chaos erupted. Protesters scrambled as tear gas filled the air, and Marcus grabbed Rosa's hand, pulling her away from the fray. "Stay close to me," he shouted, shielding her from the chaos. They ducked into an alley, coughing and wiping their eyes. Rosa clutched her sketchbook, her hands trembling. "Why do they hate us so much?" she asked, her voice cracking. Marcus knelt beside her, his heart breaking. "It's not hate, Rosa. It's greed. And they don't see us as people. They see us as obstacles." The fallout from the protest was swift and brutal. News outlets framed the protesters as violent agitators, conveniently ignoring the police's excessive force. Vaughn used the incident to justify an accelerated timeline for evictions, claiming the neighborhood had become unsafe. Amid the growing tension, an unexpected ally emerged. Clara Weston, a retired lawyer with a reputation for taking on high-profile corporate cases, reached out to Marcus and Maria. She had seen Rosa's artwork in the news and felt compelled to help. "I know how men like Vaughn operate," Clara said during their first meeting at the community center. "They use intimidation and misinformation to wear you down, but if we stand together, we can expose them." Marcus was skeptical. "Why would you risk your career for us?" Clara hesitated, guilt flickering in her eyes. "Because I've been on the other side. I helped people like Vaughn win for years. It's time I did something right." The group agreed to let Clara lead their legal battle. She quickly got to work, gathering evidence of Vaughn's unethical practices, illegal evictions, falsified documents, and backroom deals with city officials. As the case built momentum, the community found new hope. Vaughn wasn't one to go down without a fight. He unleashed a smear campaign, painting Marcus and Maria as agitators and claiming Rosa's artwork was propaganda designed to incite unrest. Local media outlets, sympathetic to Vaughn's cause, ran stories questioning Marcus's past, digging up minor legal disputes and financial troubles. The attacks took their toll. Rosa stopped posting online, fearing the backlash, and Marcus struggled to keep his composure in the face of public scrutiny. "They're trying to break us," Maria said during a late-night meeting at the community center. "But we can't let them." Clara nodded. "We need to stay focused. The truth is on our side." The lawsuit against Vaughn's company went to trial, drawing national attention. The courtroom was packed with journalists, activists, and supporters from Sycamore Lane. Marcus took the stand, his voice steady as he recounted the hardships his family and neighbors had endured. "This isn't just about me," he said, his gaze sweeping the room. "It's about all of us. About the families who built this neighborhood with their hands and hearts. We're not asking for charity. We're asking for justice." Clara presented damning evidence, exposing Vaughn's corruption and greed. The turning point came when Rosa's sketches were introduced as evidence, illustrating the human cost of the redevelopment project. The courtroom fell silent as Rosa, with trembling hands, described her work. "I draw what I see," she said softly. "And what I see is a community worth saving." The jury deliberated for hours, the tension in the courtroom palpable. When the verdict was finally announced, it was a partial victory. Vaughn's company was ordered to halt evictions, pay restitution to affected families, and allocate funds for affordable housing. The residents of Sycamore Lane celebrated their hard-fought win, but they knew the fight wasn't over. Vaughn would appeal, and the challenges of rebuilding their neighborhood remained. Months later, Sycamore Lane began to heal. The community center was refurbished, becoming a hub for education and activism. Rosa's artwork gained national recognition, and she used her platform to advocate for marginalized communities. On a quiet evening, Marcus and Rosa stood on their porch, watching the sun set over their neighborhood. The scars of the fight were still visible, but so was the hope that had been born from it. "We didn't just save a place," Marcus said, his voice filled with pride. "We saved who we are." Sycamore Lane's partial victory became a beacon of hope for other struggling communities. News of the trial and the residents' resilience spread far beyond Harbor Ridge, igniting similar movements across the region. Activists from neighboring towns reached out, seeking advice on organizing protests, filing lawsuits, and galvanizing their neighborhoods against powerful developers. Marcus found himself thrust into a leadership role he never expected. Invitations to speak at community events and panels poured in. Despite his initial reluctance, Marcus began to accept, bringing Rosa along to share their story. At one such event, Rosa stood before a packed auditorium, her sketches displayed on a projector behind her. She nervously gripped the microphone, glancing at Marcus for reassurance. He nodded, his steady gaze grounding her. "These drawings aren't just pictures," Rosa began, her voice trembling but gaining strength. "They're windows into a world people often ignore. My dad taught me that home isn't just a building. It's the people, the memories, the love. That's what we were fighting for." The audience erupted in applause, and Rosa felt a surge of pride. For the first time, she realized her voice had power, and that power could inspire change. Derek Vaughn, now a pariah in the business world, retreated from the public eye. But behind the scenes, he was plotting his comeback. Using his remaining connections, Vaughn orchestrated a smear campaign targeting Sycamore Lane's newfound allies, painting them as obstructionists hindering progress. One evening, Marcus received an anonymous email containing leaked documents. The files revealed Vaughn's plans to launch a new project in a neighboring town, using shell companies to hide his involvement. The plans included the same tactics he had used in Sycamore Lane: aggressive buyouts, underhanded deals, and displacement. "We can't let him do this again," Marcus said during an emergency meeting with Clara and Maria. "If we expose him now, we can stop him before he starts." Clara leaned over the documents, her brow furrowed. "This could work, but it's risky. If Vaughn finds out we have this, he'll come after us with everything he's got." Maria smirked. "Let him try. He doesn't scare me." The group devised a plan to leak the documents to the press while rallying public support. Rosa played a crucial role, using her growing platform to share the information with her followers. Her posts, accompanied by news sketches depicting Vaughn's shady dealings, quickly went viral. As the pressure mounted, Vaughn's legal team scrambled to control the narrative, but it was too late. Journalists uncovered additional evidence, linking Vaughn to corruption in multiple cities. The backlash was swift and unforgiving. At a press conference, Vaughn attempted to defend himself, but the questions came fast and relentless. His carefully crafted facade cracked, and his frustration boiled over. "This is nothing but a witch hunt," Vaughn snapped, his composure slipping. "These people are ruining progress with their sentimental nonsense." His words only fueled public outrage. Within days, Vaughn's remaining investors pulled out, and his company filed for bankruptcy. With Vaughn out of the picture, the residents of Sycamore Lane turned their attention to rebuilding. The restitution funds ordered by the court provided a foundation, but the true strength came from the community's determination to reclaim their neighborhood. Under Marcus's leadership, the community center expanded its programs, offering job training, after-school activities, and legal aid for residents facing housing challenges. Rosa's art workshops became a staple, attracting kids from all over Harbor Ridge. The once abandoned lots were transformed into community gardens and playgrounds, maintained by residents who took pride in their revitalized neighborhood. Even the local government, spurred by public support, pledged additional funding for infrastructure improvements. "This is what progress looks like," Maria said during a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new community garden. "It's not about erasing the past, it's about building on it." For Marcus, the fight for Sycamore Lane was more than just a battle for his home. It was a journey of self-discovery. He learned to trust his voice, to lead, and to stand up for what mattered most. Rosa, too, grew in confidence, her art becoming a powerful tool for advocacy and connection. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, Rosa handed Marcus a framed sketch. It was a portrait of him, standing tall and proud with the community center in the background. "This is how I see you," Rosa said softly. "Strong, unstoppable." Marcus swallowed hard, his chest tight with emotion. "I wouldn't be that man without you." Years later, Sycamore Lane stood as a symbol of resilience and hope. The neighborhood's story inspired legislation to protect low-income communities from predatory developers, ensuring others wouldn't face the same struggles. Rosa, now an accomplished artist, held her first gallery exhibit in the city. The centerpiece was a mural-sized piece titled "Chains of Division," depicting the journey of Sycamore Lane, from the shadows of neglect to the light of renewal. As Marcus stood in front of the mural, surrounded by neighbors and friends, he felt a profound sense of peace. The fight hadn't just saved their homes, it had saved their community, their identity, and their future. "We did this," he said quietly, his voice filled with pride. "Together." Months after Vaughn's downfall, Sycamore Lane faced an unexpected challenge. A massive storm swept through the city, leaving significant damage in its wake. Flooded streets, collapsed roofs, and uprooted trees transformed the neighborhood into a disaster zone. The sense of progress and renewal was suddenly overshadowed by despair. Marcus gathered with other residents at the community center, now serving as a makeshift shelter. Maria paced the room, her phone glued to her ear as she coordinated aid efforts. Rosa, despite her own fears, took charge of keeping the younger children calm, sketching quick cartoons to distract them. "This storm won't break us," Marcus said, addressing the weary crowd. "We've been through too much to give up now." Clara arrived shortly after, carrying a folder of documents. "I pulled some strings," she announced. "There's emergency funding available, but it'll take a strong application and a united front to get it." The community rallied once again, pooling their skills and resources. Rosa used her art to illustrate the damage and the resilience of Sycamore Lane, while Marcus and Maria worked tirelessly to gather testimonials from residents. Within weeks, their application was approved, securing the funds needed to rebuild. As repairs began, Marcus took Rosa to visit the community garden, now blooming with vibrant flowers and fresh vegetables. It was a stark contrast to the chaos they had endured. Rosa crouched near a patch of sunflowers, her fingers brushing the petals. "This place feels different now," she said softly. Marcus nodded. "It's stronger, just like us." Later that evening, Marcus sat on the porch, flipping through Rosa's sketchbook. One drawing caught his eye, a depiction of their family, Rosa, her late mother, and himself, standing together in front of their home. The sight brought tears to his eyes, but also a sense of peace. "You've kept us together, Rosa," he said when she joined him. "In more ways than I can count." Years passed, and Sycamore Lane became a symbol of what a united community could achieve. The neighborhood story was featured in documentaries, taught in classrooms, and celebrated in art galleries. Rosa, now a professional artist and activist, traveled across the country, using her platform to amplify the voices of marginalized communities. Marcus continued to lead efforts in Harbor Ridge, ensuring that no family felt alone in their struggles. His name became synonymous with resilience and hope, but he always credited the people around him. "This was never about one person," he said during a speech at a housing rights conference. "It was about all of us, standing together." On a warm summer evening, the residents of Sycamore Lane gathered for a community celebration. Children played in the streets, music filled the air, and the scent of home-cooked meals wafted from every corner. Marcus stood with Maria and Clara, watching Rosa unveil a new mural on the side of the community center. The mural depicted the journey of Sycamore Lane, the struggle, the unity, and the triumph. At its center stood a towering figure of a sunflower, its roots intertwined with the homes and hearts of the community. "This is who we are," Rosa said, addressing the crowd. "We're not just survivors, we're creators of a future we can all believe in." As the sun set over Sycamore Lane, Marcus felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The chains that once threatened to divide them had become the bonds that held them together, stronger than ever.